If you are experiencing burnout, fatigue, or overall just exhaustion, then this video is for you. Basically, I am like the poster child for burnout. If any one of you all know me personally throughout the years, you know that I let my ambitions get the best of me and I'm always working multiple jobs or always having multiple businesses I'm juggling. I have a zest for life that I just want to build. And needless to say, even though I get to engage in a lot of passionate work, it does take its toll. And if you're going through burnout right now, I totally feel you. I have been through this space and through this stuff so many times in my life, I can't even begin to count. I can say even as recently, I have been kind of at the threshold of burnout. I haven't fully gotten to fatigue or like chronic burnout, but needless to say, I know of many different ways to manage it and some tools to help navigate through yourself out of that and to the other side. But today, I want to share with you something that came up recently as I was starting to get burnt out, in hopes that it may help you kind of shift perspective and anchor into something that will help you get instant guidance right away. Because in that moment, sometimes when we are in that burnout phase, we can just feel so isolated and so alone. The answers, solutions, everything, it's kind of constricted energy. So we don't get to, we may not see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? But we're going to unpack that a little bit more in just a second. What I will tell you is the number one cause for me for burnout, and maybe this is the same for you, I don't know if this is universal truth, but it's definitely a relative truth, is that it's one of internalized pressure. It's internalized pressure that I put on myself to perform, to do the thing, for the success, to maximize the opportunity. I'm always like wanting to optimize and maximize. Because I do a lot, I don't want to exert energy into a certain area that isn't fruitful. So I'm always constantly putting extra pressure on myself than probably is necessary. What I also find myself doing, the more I do pursue the goals and get into the thick of the tasks and the work of the work, I start to deviate from the relationship of me co-creating with God or with the universe in that more empowered state. And I start to fall more into relying only on my personal power, which then is combated by this internalized pressure, and that's starting to create even more of a pressure cooker situation. So I hope you see the relationship there, and maybe you resonate with that. We're going to dive in deeper into that and unpack it in just a second, but I kind of wanted to give you a 10,000 foot view before getting into a story here. So just the other day, I definitely have been like coming up on the heels of a potential burnout. Thankfully, I know the signs now that I can start to see it and sense it and know how to prevent it or to slow it down. Usually it is a process of me slowing down, but that's another tool. But leading up to this weekend, I had a number of events, and for me, it is an extra exertion of energy because I'm not as extroverted as I used to be in my younger years. I'm more introverted, and while I do see the value of social connection and I do love to do in-person events, it does take a toll on me. And not only that, but leading up to the event, there's all the preparation, there's all the, the printouts, the signs, the branding, the things, and the logistics, the planning, the coordination, all the details are all riding up within those 48 hours leading up to the event. And that's where I feel the most pressure. As I was walking out of the gym just the other day, I was feeling like I'm doing all this work, and then I worked out so that I could be in a good, energetic hygiene for the event and not be all like stressed out. But inadvertently, it also made me feel like I'm just doing more work, even though that is self-care. It's still working out is like, it's work. It's not like laying out and just relaxing. So while I knew I did something good for myself and I'm doing the right thing to keep myself in balance per se, in that moment walking out of the gym, I did not feel my normal like feel good and like, oh, I just released a bunch of endorphins kind of feeling. So needless to say, I was in a state of despair and just like when is it going to feel better? And in that moment, I went within, of course, and what came up for me, which is kind of interesting, was this proverb from Book of Psalm in the Bible. Now, I will just quickly sidebar and say this is not a religious teaching, and I don't do Bible study or anything like that. But I do find inspiration from that body of work, the Bible. I do feel like there is a lot of illumination in there, and there's intentions of positively inspiring and empowering the human journey from a spiritual lens. So once in a while, some things will stick with me that I will grab hold of. And for some reason, this came up for me. Be still and know that I am God. Now, it wasn't just this saying that was bringing me peace or intended to bring me peace. Instead, it was like I was being, the words I am were being highlighted for me. So, you know, when you, any meditation teacher is going to tell you about that I am presence when you are meditating. It's kind of like spirituality 101, new age teachings of when you are going within, reciting that I am presence is kind of acknowledging the awareness that you are, that you have this connection with God, that God presence I am. And so for some reason, my mind just kind of like grabbed hold of that and started to unpack it even further. And it was like a question popped up in my head. And this is just for exploration. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. But when I twisted the perspective, it kind of shifted something. So, you know, in the Bible, we always think that like, this is what God was saying. And this was quoted, this is from the voice of God. Be still and know that I am God. Not that I meant to do masculine voice because mother, father, God, like it could be both non-gender. Anyway, in that moment, I was like, what if instead of that being the voice of God, it was intended for us to say it in first person, to say it as in like, I am God. Now, I know already that might trigger people. Trust me, I'm not trying to say or to showboat myself or to say that like I am God above or below anyone else. What I'm trying to get at here is that we have divine connection with God at all times. And what I feel like I was being directed to be aware of here is that I am God, not separate, that I am in direct connection with God. I have a direct upline with God, as do you, we all do. So I feel like the guidance for this was to know that I am God, and in that sense, not separate, but in a total connection with God. I know that our brains can't really always perceive this because the ego will always try to course correct and say like, oh, you are having a separate self concept versus a universal consciousness oneness experience. And that's okay. That's what the human experience was for. It's for us to luxuriate in this grand illusion that we are all separate from one another, even though we are all truly connected. But in that moment, I was definitely only relying on my personal power. All my personal power. I sometimes forget to draw more upon the universal power and love and infinite potentials of all those magic moments that happen when you surrender to spirit, when you surrender to the universe. Easier said than done. But I just want you to think about that for a moment. What if it was reversed and it was meant for us to read this as in, be still. First, you have to be still in order to get that guidance. Still and know that I am God is kind of like this mindfulness check-in to like reorient, re-anchor back into presence, to knowing, to your God self. Not your ego and not your mind, but your God self. And that God self, that awareness of connection allows you to harness that power. And I don't mean power as in I'm a God. You know, I don't want it to be misconstrued in that way, but as in source creator, as in co-creator with the universe, with and in the flow of universal guidance at your disposal. I personally do not believe that God would have intended for us to would have made us rely only on our personal power to get through this journey. I personally do not believe that was how the human journey was intended to be. Now, I don't know how you feel about that, but I really do think it was meant to be symbiotic, that we get to remember that we are infinite as souls and eternal and brought into this human experience by choice so that we can experience life on this realm. That's like a whole other video and unpacking, but going back to just this relationship, just distilling it to you and God. The more you attune to that awareness and cultivate that relationship, the more readily you can get guidance. So as you know, as I was experiencing that moment of burnout, like, oh, is there anything more to this life? Am I just working? Am I ever going to get to that season where I get to relax and reap my rewards and have that momentum carry me? While I know, yes, there is going to be that, or potential for that one day, I instantly was given this download. And then I instantly, after I was like, oh yes, got back into attunement with my God self, with connection with God, then I got instant guidance after that. I got an instant personalized message that helped me shift out of that low vibration of burnout, despair, of sadness, of like strife, and got my power back, got my perspective back. And I wouldn't have gotten that otherwise if I didn't cultivate this connection and or play with the idea that I'm God. I don't want you to think that I'm trying to tell you that, but just play with that idea. I mean, what if it wasn't, or what if you weren't separate from God? What if God wants to develop a relationship with you and is waiting and is always there, is always interconnected? I just want to leave you with one last thing, one last question to ask yourself. If you are still going through burnout, how can you lean more into that connection, the connection with God, and make room for God to help with what needs to be carried out? Or maybe it's a re-strategize, maybe it's a perspective shift. For me, it's usually a massive perspective shift, a breakthrough, and then I go, oh yeah, maybe I don't need to do all these 100,000 things that I thought I needed to do. Maybe I just need to simply do like 3 of them. But those 3 things I'm divinely guided to do are extra potent and magic because they line up other things I could never have, from my human level, been able to orchestrate or puppeteer, but through the power of the universe, which is always listening, which is always tuned into you and your thoughts and your words. No pressure there. Tuning into that essence and being able to leverage that versus personal power alleviates burnout. Point blank, that instant guidance comes through when you are still and shift your perspective back into something more expansive, whether that's directly tuning back into your relationship with God, like capital G God, or higher power, or whatever that word is that you use, that pronoun, whether it's tapping back into that or just a higher version of yourself, whatever helps you here. I hope that gives you the instant guidance that you deserve, that is waiting to help you at all moments. Anyway, my friends, I hope that this has been helpful. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I will also be doing some more videos on this very thing, kind of like as it's unpacking in my life. It's very much flowing. I'm not saying that I know all the answers or anything like that. This is simply things that are this relationship with God, this kind of awakening of a more direct link is something that I've been playing with and has been coming up. So I trust that maybe you are going through this, and as we join forces together, we can unpack the idea that we are not separate from God, and really be able to utilize it, and of course in a loving, peaceful way, and in the way that is in coherence with your soul. Much love. I will see you in the next video.